You have cancer. 3 words that change a life forever. We would like to offer another 3 words. Be an overcomer. Welcome to the 1% Podcast, where our conversations with other cancer warriors, survivors, and caregivers allows us to give you that extra boost you need to face your challenge head on, live life from a new perspective, and forge a path that keeps you moving free and clear. Now, welcome your host and cancer survivor, Truett Taylor.
Welcome to today's episode of the 1% Podcast, the show where we interview young adults who are battling or surviving an unexpected cancer diagnosis. You are not alone, and I promise, by consuming today's content, your soul will be fed with the hope, courage, and inspiration you need to keep fighting for today. I'm excited to be on your journey with you today. If you haven't done so already, be sure to head over to 1percentpodcast.com to sign up for our email list to see the latest news and updates for all our guests on the show. You can also check us out on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at 1% Podcast. If you want to join in on some of our discussions, please join our Facebook group, the 1% Podcast. To contact me directly for content, questions, or booking events, you can email me at info@1percentpodcast.com. This is episode 31, and I'm Truett Taylor bringing you another killer guest and some great tips to get you started for today. So it's that time of the year for me. It's time to go get all of my scans and tests done. And as I've been thinking the past couple of days, I think there's a huge thing that a lot of us don't talk about, especially us survivors, and it's called scan anxiety, or scanxiety is what you tend to hear the term a lot, even though that's probably not a medical term. But it's that worry, that PTSD type feeling you get a week, or 2 weeks, or a month or so, especially the day before it's time to go get your scans redone, just because you're nervous and you're worried about finding out the results. So today's 1% moment of truth is going to be about scanxiety. Scanxiety may not be an accepted medical term, at least not yet, but fear and worrying about imaging both before the scan and after while waiting for the results is definitely a big thing among cancer patients. So studies suggest that having a follow-up scan after cancer treatment can trigger symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder, including intrusive thoughts, irritability, and even insomnia. Because during treatment, we worry about our regimen working, and then after remission, we worry about reoccurrence. It's like an emotional roulette sometimes. The wheel spins, and we go around for days or weeks, even before spitting out the answer. So here's a few tips to manage scanxiety. Number 1. Plan ahead. Since many scans occur at specific intervals throughout the year, you have a planning advantage. Consider which parts of the process make you most anxious and devise a plan of action to make that experience easier. So what I like to do is book an appointment early in the morning. That way I can get straight up and get going and get there, and just try to have some kind of counseling time or something like that in between with a family member. So, which kind of leads me to my second point. Identify your go-to people. Cancer is a deeply personal experience, so it's critical to identify a few people that you can help rely on during your weakest moments. If it's calling a friend or if it's calling a parent, just to tell them about your troubles and what you're worried about. For me, it was my mom and my wife. We were just talking about everything the past couple of days. So identify a couple of go-to people that will really help you during this time. Shifting your thinking is another thing I do as well. Rather than preparing for bad news, which I think you can't help in a way, try to visualize the best possible scenario. So we can always think about what's the worst thing that can happen if my cancer comes back and all those things. But why don't you draw out a picture in your mind of what the scan was going to show? Ground yourself there. There's no point in worrying about the future until you actually know there's something to worry about. I heard a quote one time that says, anxiety is like sitting in a rocking chair. You're making a lot of movement, but you're not really going anywhere. Remember, if something does show up from your doctor, and your medical team will be there to help address it and help get you through that. And the last technique I recommend is to just zone out or find some sort of meditation, or it's time for you to go for a walk. Maybe if you like yoga, if you like working a lot, enjoying your favorite podcast, do something that's going to make you feel good, something that's going to be a distraction from you worrying. For me, I have a furniture business that I work in really hard, so just getting really deep into a project. I have a podcast playing in my ear, so I'm working, I'm listening to something great, something that's pouring great into my mind. I'm physically working on something, and it tends to distract me a lot from the worry, the anxiety of what's upcoming. And now going into my 6th year of being cancer-free, which I'll find out actually tomorrow, the longer you live with cancer, the more you learn to cope with recurring anxiety. It doesn't mean it doesn't happen, because it definitely still happens. But as time goes on, we do get better with learning how to cope with anxiety as long as we start from the very beginning. So that's today's 1% moment of truth. Let's talk a little bit about the person I got to interview today. So again, at the Colorectal Cancer Alliance conference in Houston a couple of months ago, I heard an amazing lady stand up and start talking about her ostomy bag and all these different things that she was mentioning. And I was like, whoa, just exploded with a great sense of confidence, and I could just tell by listening to her talk that she was a huge advocate for the colorectal community. So after speaking with her, I invited her to be a guest on the show. I'm so glad she said yes. So today our guest is Miss Peg Myrick. Peg is a stage 4 cancer warrior, and she's going to tell us a little bit about what it's like to live with stage 4 cancer. We talk about her life prior to cancer. We go into what the day-to-day is like for her, and we talk about her outcome and her mindset about the future. So I want you to enjoy my interview with Miss Peg Myrick today. She's a great advocate for the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, and she's a part of the Never Too Young initiative. So enjoy my interview with Miss Peg Myrick. Peg, how's it going today?
Hey, Truett, I'm good. How are you?
Good. Can't wait to talk to you, man. I've been thinking about it all day long. I was looking at my calendar every time the notification popped up. I was like, okay, I got 2 more hours and I got 1 more hour, and here we go. So really looking forward to sharing your story with all the people that are listening to the podcast today. Why don't you start off by telling everyone a little bit about yourself?
Absolutely. My name is Peggy Myrick, but my friends call me Peg, and I live in Richmond, Virginia, and I'm a stage 4 colorectal cancer patient / warrior. I love that word.
And when were you first diagnosed with cancer?
I was diagnosed at age 36, and it was on Halloween 2016, and I was diagnosed at stage 4 with metastases to my liver. Before I was diagnosed, I was a middle school principal, and after 15 years in public school system, after I was diagnosed, I retired on disability.
Gotcha. So you were laying down the law in the middle school, huh?
Absolutely. I taught for 12 years, then went back and got my master's at the University of Virginia in administration. And now, even though I'm retired, technically, I have found a home with the Colorectal Cancer Alliance on the Never Too Young Advisory Board. And I'm also a Fight Colorectal Cancer ambassador. So I'm continuing my teaching and sharing information, just in a different location and format.
Perfect. Awesome. So why do you feel like it's important to share your story? I know you have a very unique story, and it's an ongoing story. Why do you feel like it's important for you to be able to share your story with all of our listeners today?
Since I was diagnosed, it's been important to me to share my journey every step of the way. I have a blog, and through my blog, through my Facebook page, and pretty much any forum that I can get away to, I share my story. And to me, I do this because it's important to raise awareness, first of all, because I was told that I was too young for colorectal cancer. And I share my story because I never want another patient to be told they're too young. There's a rise of patients diagnosed under 50 for this disease, and it's important to me, the more I share my story and the more collectively we share our stories, we're able to educate people, get the word out, and hopefully bring awareness and raise funds for finding the reason that more people are being diagnosed under 50, and ultimately to find a cure.
Isn't it crazy to think, and I felt the same way, like when you were telling people you first had cancer, that's the old person's cancer. You know what I mean? Like you would get
absolutely
comments like that. Like that's what old people get. They get colon cancer, not 30-year-olds. So
absolutely.
Yeah, the young adult population. I know we saw that statistic recently at the Colorectal Cancer Alliance conference, mouthful. But isn't that crazy to think that the stats are going down for people that are over 50? So they're getting less cancer, but us, it's on the rise just tremendously.
Exactly. And unfortunately, my story is not unique, as you know. So I also share my story to encourage people to trust their gut, listen to their body, and get second opinions. I was misdiagnosed for over 10 months
Wow.
because 2 different doctors told me that I was too young for this disease. So if by sharing my story, I can help somebody go and get that second opinion or ask a few more questions, seek out other resources to figure out what's going on. I wish I would have been able to do that. And so I share my story to hopefully prevent somebody else from being delayed their diagnosis.
Yeah, I love that. So let's talk a little bit about your life prior to your cancer diagnosis. You said you were 36 and it was on Halloween.
Yes, quite a Halloween present.
Yeah. I don't even know. Like, what do you dress up as?
It's crazy.
So prior to your life, you said you were a teacher for 12 years and a principal. Tell us about your life. Like, what kind of goals did you have in life, and how was your overall health prior to your diagnosis?
Overall, I was healthy. I was very fortunate the first 36 of my life, first 36 years of my life, excuse me. I didn't really experience any major hardships or setbacks. I was healthy. I was fortunate to have all 4 of my grandparents in my life for the first 28 years of my life. I was close to my family and still am. I have amazing friends that I enjoyed traveling with, planning trips, and just enjoying time together. I was a Spanish teacher for 12 years here, right outside of Richmond. Got my master's, became a school administrator in Northumberland County. It was important to me that I would set goals, work hard, and I was able to achieve it. So my life looks very different now. But prior to cancer, I was enjoying my life with friends and family and, working hard at my career.
Yeah. So when you think back on it, like before you were diagnosed, what did you envision the rest of your life looking like? What was, you were an administrator in a school. Like what did you see, like maybe your 40s or your 50s looking like?
I really loved my work in public education, so I could have seen myself staying a school administrator, maybe eventually moving up to a school board office position, something like that. But I really loved the interaction with students, and supervising teachers, providing them with supports, and fighting for resources for our kids, for teachers. So I could have seen myself definitely staying in the public administration and in schools for a long time. I had a house in the Northern Neck at a waterfront community, and I, enjoyed quiet, peaceful life out there, kind of on the river, spending time. I'm a water bug for sure. So swimming anytime I can get, go out on a pontoon boat with my family. We would, in the summer rent boats and go swimming, and spending time with my niece and nephew, seeing them grow up, and being a part of their lives. I had my plan was to just kind of keep going what I was going, the path I was on.
So in Virginia, are you considered a Southerner in Virginia?
I'm originally from North Carolina. I moved to Virginia when I was 8. It's really funny at the Colorectal Cancer Alliance conference. Everybody was commenting on my accent. I don't hear an accent, but everyone was like, "Oh, that sweet little Southern accent you have," and I'm like, "Yeah, I guess you don't hear that kind of thing in yourself." But I guess technically, the capital of Confederacy was right here in Richmond,
Right.
so I guess we're a Southern state. But
Gotcha. I think anytime I've met anyone from that area, it's like 50-50. You kind of, it's hit or miss when it comes down to the Southern thing. Your accent's not really bad. I have certain words that I'm like, sound like super backwoods country, and then other times you can't even tell. So kind of part of it. But so it sounds like you were living your life almost as like an advocate for children in a way prior to your diagnosis, where you were supporting faculty, you said you were raising funds, and then all of a sudden that gets put on hold. Take us to the day that you said it was Halloween. Take us to the day that you were diagnosed, and give us some details on how you were told that you had cancer, and then how you felt immediately after that.
So it was Halloween 2016, and my parents came up because my colonoscopy had finally been ordered. I had for 10 months been experiencing symptoms. I was told by my primary care that it was colitis, it was maybe Crohn's disease, I needed to change my diet. I was stressed because I was a school administrator. I was told all these things. So on Halloween 2016, the last thing that the doctor told me at the hospital before my colonoscopy, my mom was standing right there with me, and the doctor told me that I didn't have to worry because this wouldn't be anything serious like cancer because I was too young for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then I wake up from my colonoscopy, and I'm a little groggy just coming out of the anesthesia, and I could just look at my mother's face. She was an RN, and knowing her and the look on her face, I just knew something was bad. And then the doctor told me that he had found a mass during my colonoscopy. He was able to get past it with the scope, but barely.
Yeah.
And that he was almost positive that it was cancer.
Well, how'd you feel when he told you that?
I think I was just in shock. I don't have any family history. I'd never known anyone with colon cancer or colorectal cancer. So I really was in shock. I didn't even know what to think. I had a CT scan done very quickly after that showed mets to my liver. So then they told me that I was stage 4 because it had spread. So it was just shock. And then I went directly into the mode of what am I going to do? How am I going to treat this? And having had a mother that was an RN, she, immediately was on the internet doing research, trying to find the best shot, set me up for giving me the best shot of beating this. So it was into workman.
Yeah. What was more surprising to you, the fact that you had cancer or when you found out that it was stage 4?
I think finding out that I had cancer. Once I found out that it was cancer, it hadn't surprised me that it had spread because I had symptoms for so long.
Yeah.
I was in so much daily pain. Now I know that I had every symptom of colorectal cancer. The abdominal cramping, unexplained weight loss, blood in my stool, diarrhea, all these symptoms that I now know are colorectal cancer symptoms. And when I had done some research before, I knew that cancer was a possibility based on the symptoms that I had, but I trusted the doctors that I was seeing. They were telling me that I was too young. They were telling me it was these other things, which colitis, Crohn's disease, there are some overlap in symptoms, but I wish that I would have pushed for this colonoscopy earlier because then I would know for sure that it was cancer and be able to get help sooner.
Yeah. See, all of us, I think a lot of people that I've spoken to, we all tend to wait, right? Because it could be one thing. It could be another thing. It could be another thing. I hear a lot, and my doctor even said to me the same thing. He's like, well, it's probably either hemorrhoids or Crohn's disease. And I was freaking out because I'd never even had a cavity before. And then they're telling me I've got like a disease and all this other stuff. And then come to find out, like they couldn't even get the scope past my tumor.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And it's like, wow, it's like, how did this happen? And then you start backtracking in your mind. Well, this started happening this year and then this year. And then you kind of like start to play that back. Why do you think, and just your opinion, and I've got my own opinion about this, but why do you think that us as young adults tend to ignore the symptoms or kind of push them out further than maybe someone who's a little bit older?
I think, first of all, if I would have known that colorectal cancer is on the rise with younger people, I would have, pushed a little bit sooner for the colonoscopy. I think we get busy in our own lives, and, I was at the pinnacle of my career. I had worked hard. I was trusting doctors, and I was taught to, take a doctor's word at gospel. Not that I was taught that necessarily, but it's what I did, as an authority figure. This doctor's been to school. He knows what he's talking about, or she knows what she's talking about. So I think getting busy. And then also with this particular type of cancer, nobody knows unless you tell them. It's not a lump that other people can look at and see.
Right.
So if you're not talking about things like what your poop looks like, or having blood in your stool, or having, cramps, that kind of thing, nobody knows it. So I think it's it can be an invisible disease unless people are talking about it. And I think the more we talk about it and raise awareness, that takes away the stigma of talking about your poop.
Yeah.
You know?
It's not something that you think that you have to talk about, but now obviously you do. You have to be more aware of that as a young adult when it comes down to colon cancer, because it's the second most common cancer now, which is kind of wild. So tell us about your treatment. So when you first got diagnosed, did you have a colon resection to remove the tumor and then started chemo? What was your treatment schedule like?
So when I was first diagnosed, like I said, my mother had researched and we decided that Johns Hopkins would give me my best shot. So I ended up applying for and getting in the rectal tumor board at Johns Hopkins in Baltimore. And I credit them with extending my life, because I was told I was inoperable. So my liver was over 80% covered in tumors.
Wow.
And so I went on chemo immediately. And I did FOLFIRINOX, which combines the irinotecan and the oxaliplatin with the 5-FU pump. They wanted to hit me hard because I was younger and they thought that my body would be able to handle it.
Yeah.
And otherwise in decent health. So I went on the FOLFIRINOX first, chemo. I couldn't handle the side effects of the oxaliplatin, and they were worried they'd become permanent with the neuropathy and the cold sensitivity. So I dropped the oxaliplatin and went on FOLFIRI. And after about 4 months on chemo, because I was in with the rectal tumor board at Johns Hopkins, I had a regularly scheduled CT scan that was taken to the board, and the doctors sit down and review. And having all the doctors in one room talking about my scan made all the difference, because it wasn't just my oncologist, making decisions. My liver surgeon was there. The colon surgeon was there. They've got everybody looking, the radiologist, a radiation oncologist, everyone there looking and saying, hey, here's what I think I could contribute and how I can help this patient. Here's what I think I can do. So the liver surgeon spoke up and said, after I was on chemo for 5 months, he said, I think I can take a hack at her liver. So I moved from being inoperable to being operable and was able to have surgery. And on April 28th in 2017, I had 2 feet of my colon and my rectum removed, which took out my primary tumor, half of my liver. I had two tumors resected and 1 ablated. My gallbladder was removed, which I didn't know my gallbladder was going to be removed, but they found a tumor that was close to it. And so they took it. It was weird waking up without a body part I didn't know I was going to be missing.
Yeah.
Even though, it's not like you need your gallbladder every day, I guess, but still it was a weird thing to wake up missing parts that you didn't know were going to be gone. And I had a temporary ileostomy created. And they also removed 20 lymph nodes at that time, and all 20, when they sent to pathology, tested positive for cancer. So I knew that my battle was far from over.
You woke up a lot lighter with all that missing, huh?
I did. After my first surgery, I went on Xeloda, which is the pill form of 5-FU. And while I was on Xeloda, I had a recurrence of my cancer in my liver. It came back. My first CT scan showed that it was already back. So I went back on IV chemo. This time I did FOLFIRI and Vectibix, which is a targeted therapy. And then I had a second surgery this past June to repair 2 hernias, change my temporary ileostomy to a permanent colostomy. And now I'm currently in the process of researching and applying for some clinical trials.
Gotcha. So everything's kind of progressed a lot. You've kind of checking the list off of all the things you can get done, right?
Absolutely. And that's why I feel like, I want to work as much as I can with the Colorectal Cancer Alliance with Fight CRC, because I've had surgery, I've had radiation, I've had a recurrence, I've been on different drugs, I'm looking for clinical trials, I have an ostomy. So if I can be a resource or a help to anyone newly diagnosed, I know that helped me when I first was diagnosed 2 years ago. So I want to kind of give back and be able to support new people. It helps to talk to someone that's been there.
Yeah.
That has experienced those symptoms or has gotten that diagnosis. So I want to do that for people as it was done for me.
What's the most difficult thing about living with an ostomy?
I think I'm very fortunate in that it's something that even though I didn't know anything about ostomies before I got one, I never even heard the word
Mm,
before I found out I was getting one. Um, I think the um, adjustment, it's different. You're not pooping out your butt anymore.
yeah.
And, learning the techniques to manage your particular bag because everyone's different. But I chose the temporary ostomy, ileostomy. I chose to get the permanent colostomy after that. Some people go through a reversal and it's very successful. Some people go through a reversal and have issues, but I've chosen the permanent colostomy because to me, it has not slowed my life down. I'm
Mm,
able to do everything that, I want to do. And, um, the hardest part was just finding the right products that work for me.
yeah.
And so I, did my research online. I ordered samples from all three of the major ostomy supply companies and kind of tested them out and figured out what works best for my skin and my situation. So yeah, I'm a big advocate, and that's something even in the cancer community I'm trying to speak out more about because I've found even going to conferences or in some of the online support groups, it's not a topic that comes up as much.
Yeah.
Um, and it's not something I like that you can meet somebody and they don't know you have one unless you tell them.
Absolutely.
But I also think it's awesome. I've seen some of my, fellow colorectal cancer warriors that are out there living with their bag out, and taking pictures, on the beach in a bikini. And I think that's awesome. It's something again that the more we talk about, the more the stigma will go away.
Yeah. So let's dig in deep to something. And, we've talked about a lot of the physical side of everything and the different physical things you have happen. Let's talk about the emotional side because that doesn't get discussed a tremendous amount in a lot of different communities. As your body's changing, as your identity is changing, and you take on, a disease, a metastatic disease, and surgery, and then an ostomy, like your identity shifts because all of those things become a part of who you are, right? You don't become part of them; they become part of you, and they're just another page in your life story. How have you been able to deal with that, like emotionally and mentally? Because I know there's moments where, you're a human being. You have moments where you're like, what, maybe why this happened or what's going on or, just moments where you're thinking, I have to deal with this, those moments where you get inside your own head and you really, sometimes instead of looking straight ahead towards the future, you look down and you just kind of get engulfed in the moment a little bit. Tell us about maybe like one of your lowest moments where you were just, where you were in deep and it was just a really tough moment for you to overcome.
I think the lowest moment to me was finding out that my recurrence had happened so soon after going through this major surgery because I had all the cancer cut out of my body and I was told that their margins were good and I knew that because it was in my lymphatic system that it would probably come back eventually,
Yeah.
but I was not mentally prepared to right after surgery and still being on treatment, finding out that it was back in my liver already. So I think that was my lowest point, that I was just not prepared and I was blindsided that I had gone through everything that I had and it was back so soon.
Yeah. What were some of the feelings that you had at that moment?
I think shock, um, disappointment, frustration, and I think being at your lowest point when you're, that upset, you have to rely on people. And I've been used to being the helper and the one that helps other people. And so I found, at my lowest point that I needed to rely on my support system and
Mhm.
rely on the people that, love me and that want to help me to get me through. So I think talking about how I felt, seeing a therapist,
Mhm.
therapy is so important because mental health is something that doctors don't talk a lot about when especially if you're stage 4, their focus is physical health, getting the cancer out of your body, finding ways to heal you. But I think mental health is just as much, if not more important to focus on, that you're taking care of yourself, that you're, gentle with yourself. You're setting yourself up for, whatever you can do to make your days a little bit easier. And that looks different for every person, but I think that's something that it's important that we talk about.
Yeah. If you could go back and tell yourself something at that moment right now, what would you tell yourself?
I would tell myself that it's going to be okay. And okay looks different for everybody. And, I would just want, to be relying on my support system to comfort me. And to comfort myself. Sometimes, I even took some time alone, and that was good too, to just process on my own, so everybody has to figure out what self-care looks like for them. But I think that's really important, that you seek help, that you find ways to take care of yourself, whatever that looks like.
Yeah. The reason I ask you that is because, one, it kind of helps you reflect back on things, because what we can do is we can push those emotions down sometimes and not deal with them. And it's like anything else, the more you run from things, it's still going to catch up with you eventually as you continue to go through other things. But another
Definitely.
reason is I see a lot of people there's a life cycle for being a cancer patient. And, going back and you may be speaking to someone right now who just had a reoccurrence. And a lot of the people that I've spoken to, they said it was worse hearing the second time than it was the first time, because the first time you're in shock and you can't believe, and all these things, you got all these emotions, you're really at the very beginning of the grief cycle. But the second time, it's more of like a huge letdown, and it's more of like a PTSD kind of thing. I'm going to have to go through this again. I'm going to have to take this drug. I'm going to have to do all these different things. And it's really a different level of strength, because it almost wipes out the strength bucket for a while. And then you really, have to get back up on the horse and really kind of ride into the right direction, which is a difficult thing to do. It's easy for everybody to rally around you and be the person with cancer, and everybody supports and everybody's happy. But then when it comes back the second time, a lot of people are like, oh my gosh, it's the second time. Are they going to make it? You start getting those looks a little different than you were like the very first time and stuff. So, we've talked about this a lot already, but being a young adult now, we have so many more things to look out for. And whether it's the food or the environment or the type of stress that we have in our life, there's all that no one can really put their finger on exactly why we're getting cancer more than, older adults in a lot of ways. What would you say would be one or two pieces of advice that you'd give someone, a young adult right now who's listening, that may be experiencing cancer, or even a caregiver maybe out there that is having to really comfort someone who has cancer at the moment?
I think it's important, especially for young adults, to listen to your body and trust your instinct. You are your own best advocate. And I wish that I would have pushed sooner to get another opinion, to get a colonoscopy, so that I, wouldn't have suffered as long as I did. So don't be afraid to get second opinions, third opinions. You're not going to offend your doctor if you need to go see another one. So trust your gut, listen to your body, seek out support. I'm so fortunate to have found the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. I'm so glad that I've been able to go to Capitol Hill with Fight CRC and advocate for funding for colorectal cancer research. And the lifelong friends that I've made through these organizations have really helped me through some of my hard times too. And it really is like a family, that anything you need, it helps to talk to people that have been through what you've gone through. I have amazing family and friends that are super supportive, but there's something about connecting with another cancer patient who's literally felt the side effects that you've gone through, and, they get it.
Yeah.
So finding support, whatever that looks like, through an online support network, through your hospital, in-person support groups. Don't be afraid to ask for help, and be willing to accept help. I found that being able to tell people specifically how they can support you helps. For example, if you're going through chemo and you unhook on Wednesdays and that's your hardest day, I could use some meals on Wednesdays. I feel terrible on Wednesdays. Here's how you can help me. People want to help, but a lot of times don't know how. And so if you give them specific ways that they can help, I think, you'll find that helps you get what you need and then helps your support system support you the best they can.
I love that advice. Be specific about what you need. A lot of people do want to help, and some people don't want to pry into it. Some people just try to start doing things without knowing what you need. But I've always subscribed to the philosophy that you have to treat everybody different. And if someone needs something different over someone else, you really need to pay attention to what specifically they need compared to maybe what you need or someone else needed at that
Absolutely. And one other piece of advice that I would have for anyone is get involved in your own treatment. It's been important for me to be the coach of my treatment team. I love my oncologists, I love my surgeons, but at the end of the day, the decisions that are made, this is my body, it's my life, and I have the final say. You don't have to go through any treatment that you don't want to, and that's okay. It's not giving up if you decide to take a chemo break. Right. You have to live the best life that you can live, and to me, quality of life is super important. And no one knows why this stuff is happening to us. All we can do is make the most of each day we do still have left.
Yeah. So I know you and I met at the conference that we went to. That was my first conference I've ever been to for the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. And just sitting in the room with over 100 people who all had either had the disease or were supporting someone who had the disease, it was amazing just to be in a room where, when you're introducing yourself to someone, it's always awkward. You're like, hey, and you start talking in a crowd. But in this room, there were so many people who, you just you looked at each other and you kind of got it. You know what I mean? Whether
yes.
you had been through before. And I thought that was just so powerful. And to me, as I don't know if it's part of, being a stubborn guy, but I was never a part of any kind of support groups whenever I was battling. And here I am, 6 years later doing different things and stuff, but being in that group was just, it meant so much to me. And even if you didn't talk to everyone there, just being around people that are like-minded who got it, it was just, the support system was phenomenal. I know you've done a lot of stuff with the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. Why don't you tell everyone who's listening today why they should become a member of the Colorectal Cancer Alliance? Put you on the spot with that. So, but yeah, tell everyone why I should become a member and what kind of support you feel like that they would get from that group.
It has been so amazing to be involved in the Colorectal Cancer Alliance. And I encourage everyone to get involved. I have been able to work as a buddy. So I'm paired with a newly diagnosed patient and also on the Never Too Young advisory board. So I encourage people to get involved because you can find ways that you can help, whether that be to raise money online, if fundraising's your thing, or, being able to come up with resources. There's so many things that you can do. There's the Blue Ball, the Blue Hope Bash, that is an amazing fundraiser in DC and Denver. But we're all united for the same cause, and that's to eradicate this disease, to find out why it's happening for younger patients, and ultimately to find a cure. So I encourage people to find ways that they can get involved. Blue Hope Nation is the Facebook page for the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, and Blue Hope Nation's been an amazing support for me.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think finding your niche in the Colorectal Cancer Alliance, or again, if somebody's listening that has a different type of cancer, there are so many support groups out there for each type of cancer. And then there are also support groups and activities that you can get involved in for people of all different types of cancer. For example, I did a First Descents trip, and that's for patients diagnosed under the age of 40. and it's an outdoor adventure that it's all expenses paid. I did it this past May and June, and it was a week in the mountains. We did whitewater kayaking, and again, it was just amazing to connect with people. I was the only one with colorectal cancer, and some people had been in remission for 5 years. But just to connect with somebody who, had been through a diagnosis or is still in treatment, it's amazing. So you're not alone. There are ways that you can get support, whether that be financial, emotional, but just seek them out and don't be afraid to, take that leap and get involved.
Yeah. All right, Peg. One of the last questions I ask everybody on the podcast is a question that's not easy to answer, I would say, in a lot of ways. And it all depends on the way you look at your disease. But I know you, and I know just your attitude about everything. I think you'll have a great answer for this. But what is the best thing cancer has done for your life? I know it's a harder question. It's a kind of an awkward question, but it's just a perspective I think that I want a lot of people to look at. Like, cancer's, not the end of everything immediately. You know what I mean? Like, and I truly believe everybody's got a different belief system, but whether it's here or on the other side, there'll be a day where you won't have cancer. And but as you go through it, as you've experienced things, as it's led you to different relationships with different people and stuff like that, what do you feel like is the best thing that cancer's done for your life?
I think the best thing that cancer has done for me is to really help me focus on what's important in my life. And that's not things, it's not having the biggest house. It is spending time with the people that I care about, making memories. In fact, I have this saying that I say, less stuff, more experiences.
Yeah.
I don't need things. I can't take things with me when I go.
Right.
So I've been really focusing on living that. And I just got back from a trip to the Grand Canyon with my cousin. We flew to Vegas, rented a car, and drove to the Grand Canyon. We got to see the sunrise from inside the Grand Canyon, which is just one of the highlights of my life. It was incredible. Coming up, I've got a trip with one of my best friends to a music festival in Mexico right outside of Cancun for my birthday, which I'm looking forward to. So just finding different experiences to make those memories. That to me is way more important than, going on Amazon and buying stuff. Even for Christmas presents, I'm trying to do experiences where I got tickets to the Wizard of Oz to go with my brother and his family and my dad and my niece and nephew. And, going out and doing things and making those memories, it's really focused me on what's important. That's spending time with loved ones, more experiences, and just enjoying life, because cancer or not, none of us are guaranteed another day here on earth.
Right.
So we might as well make the most of every day and enjoy it.
Oh, I love that. I love that piece of advice. That's so true. Our lives are so much more intentional now that when you have to think about things a little differently. I spoke to someone earlier, and they were telling me it's not about the longevity of life. We always think about, and we hear things of, I want to live a long life. But she told me, why not, instead of try to live a long life, why don't we live a deeper and wider life where we get to enjoy more experiences, like you mentioned, and really enjoy life more instead of just trying to live to like a certain age, which is kind
Definitely.
It's a different way of thinking of things. And it's a perspective changer, I think, in a lot of ways. Well, Peg, why don't you let everyone know how they can get in touch with you? And I know you've got a blog out too, right?
I do. I have a blog that I've kept since my diagnosis, and I would love for your listeners to check it out. It's www.pegscancerjourney.wordpress.com. That's pegscancerjourney.wordpress.com. I'm on Facebook as Peg Myrick. Feel free to friend me. I post a lot about my experiences through my blog and then also on my Facebook page. On Instagram, I'm PEGARTA, Pegarta. Twitter, I'm Peggy_Myrick. And my email address is peggymyrick@yahoo.com. So I welcome any feedback from your listeners, or if anybody has any questions about anything I talked about, I'm happy to connect with them.
Awesome. Peg, you were so cool, man. Not being creepy, but when I was in the crowd in Houston and I heard you talk, I just knew that I had to have you on the show, just listening to you chat and how open you were and just how much of an advocate that you are about the disease and you're so transparent with everything that you have going through, everything that you're going through. And I think if one of our listeners wants to connect with you, maybe they have a question that specifically they can get answered from you, I'd love for them to reach out to you. And thank you for providing all your information. I'll drop all of your contact information in the show notes and everything so people can reach out to you and definitely connect with you. But I appreciate you spending time with us today and sharing your story. And we're going to be here with you right along your fight as you go through the clinical trials and everything. You're not alone with everything that you're going through. And people can't see it right now, but I think it's so funny, the sign you have hanging above your head, which is totally true. I don't know if that's for me or if that's just to remind you or what it is, but it says you're simply amazing, which you are simply amazing, Peg. And I appreciate you being on the show today, and we'll be in touch with you soon. Okay.
Thanks so much, Truett.
We appreciate you spending time with us on today's episode and encourage you to continue the conversation to help you keep pushing forward. For more resources based on today's episode, as well as ways to recommend a guest and connect to Truett personally, head over to 1%podcast.com. Be sure to join us next time for more stories of inspiration right here with Truett Taylor on the 1% Podcast.